This is the GPL podcast from GopherPuckLive.com.
You know, a good recruiting tip is like, where can I get a good drink around here?
Oh boy. Jupe making mistakes. I love it. And so I had to train for this marathon.
Make sure you stay awake for the game tomorrow, too.
So right away my confidence is doing really well before that. And then Don goes, "Can anybody on the ice take a penalty shot?" And the referee goes, "No, it has to be Ramsey." And I'm like, "Okay, there's shot 2 to the confidence. That's great."
Now, here's Jupiter and Vigo. Good evening and welcome to the GPL podcast, episode number 234. Good evening, Vigs. How are things with you tonight after a busy weekend for you?
Yeah, busy weekend, a lot of hockey. I know a lot of hockey families are dealing with districts and regions and state tournament, and it's just the best part of the year right now.
Well, our guest is participating in some of that, and he's representing his high school tonight. So let's bring him in. Jack Ramsey representing the Skippers of Minnetonka. How you doing, Jack?
I'm doing great, guys. Thanks for having me back yet again.
It's always fun to have you on.
Pleasure.
Yeah. We needed a guest too. You know, it's like in between week. There's no hockey for the Gophers this week.
It's perfect.
I'm just playing with you. Oh boy. Well, like Vigs said, it's a busy time of year, Vigs. Like you said, you barely got in Saturday because you were up since the crack of dawn on Saturday, and then you had your youth hockey all day, and then you came down to Mariucci and saw the Gophers sweep the Buckeyes.
It was the perfect Minnesota day. I had an 8 o'clock squirt game. I had a Mite Jamboree over at West Side Arena. Then I had another squirt game in the afternoon. I thought, why not top it off with the Ohio State, Minnesota at Mariucci, and then hang out afterwards and talk hockey with a lot of great people. It was fun to see all the people in the building. Kyle Dubas was there watching Kester and Nyes. Bill Guerin was there watching Brock Faber. Scott Bell from, Gopher fandom era and coaching and now scouting for the Maple Leafs was there too.
Yep.
And
Toronto.
A lot of people in the hockey world were at Mariucci Saturday.
Well, I was talking to Jack before the show. I'm like, has he had a chance to get down to Mariucci this year? And he's kind of like you. You've been busy with all the youth hockey and coaching and everything, haven't you?
Yep. You got to make choices with where you get to. And it's been a challenge this year, but I've been at Mariucci most Saturday nights when I can get there. So it's been fun to watch this team because this is a special group. I mean, I think you hear Bob talk every week about how great his defensive core is. Now he's kind of come around on that first line, and he says maybe it's the best one he's been around in college hockey, which is 37 years. And they produce this weekend again.
What do you think? Are they the best line in years, Jack? They're pretty good.
That's what the word on the street is, honestly. It's people, you hear that coming from people who don't like Gopher hockey too, so it means a lot.
It's a big deal, Vigs, and I know that the U kind of wants to tamper that down. He doesn't kind of let's keep those guys out of the media because now everyone wants to talk to Nyes. They want to talk to Snuggery. They want to talk to Cooley, and Coach has to kind of reel them back in a little bit, doesn't he?
Well, I think sometimes Coach worries about someone's head maybe getting too big and somebody else maybe feeling a little bruised that they're not being brought up. When you ask Bob a question, like, can you talk about Brock's game tonight? He's going to be the first one to say, well, Ryan Johnson played pretty well. Carl Fish played pretty well. Luke Middlestat, he's always playing well, and he won't answer your question about how well Brock played. That's just kind of his thing, but he's kind of given in the last couple of weeks to be like, yep, these guys are pretty special, and it's fun to watch what they do out there.
Now, Jack, I think really the big thing about this team is not just that they have a great top line. They do have quite a bit of depth, and maybe not all the time scoring, but they're all doing the other things like back checking and doing the right things.
Yeah, 100%. It's the depth helps out because you just choke teams by the end of the game, but Bob's got them playing the right way, and that's what everybody's been kind of waiting for a few years, as you have
Mhm.
those skilled players, but you need those skilled players playing the right way. And I think you're seeing the dividends hopefully pay off at the end of this year.
So 4-0 Friday night Veeks. Another shutout, the sixth shutout this season for Mr. Close, who was the backup to the backup not too long ago. Boy, is he shining still.
I think the thing about Closer is he's getting more and more confident between the pipes. And I've been a little critical sometimes about his size and having to fight pucks when he has to go, post to post or read a play that goes across the slot to the other side. He's gotten so much more confident about being aggressive on those and attacking the puck. And he is making reads and saves that I don't think he would have made a year and a half ago. And for this team to maybe pull out a game where they don't play their best in an elimination NCAA type situation, they're going to need him to make some saves that he wouldn't have made a year and a half ago that he's making now. And he could be a difference maker for them in the playoffs at this point.
How big is confidence, Jack? You've been out there a long time. You know, when your confidence is up and down, it makes a difference in your game, doesn't it?
100%. And it goes to your teammates too, though. Like they can
Okay.
play totally more freely, I think. And like you said, if you're not having your game, you have that guy back there. So it's, if the goalie's confidence is up, everybody, what is it, rising tide, floats all
Builds off each
boats or
other.
whatever,
Lifts all boats.
Yeah, lifts all boats.
Lifts all
Yeah.
boats.
So if Closer's playing good, I think everybody's going to play confident, and that's when you steamroll.
So the shutout Friday night Vegas, great game. Saturday night didn't start off so well. Double major penalties by Snuggerud and Nyes. Nyes owned up to it after the game. He was like, "I was just stupid. I apologize to my teammates. They played really well, except the last couple seconds of the period and the last couple seconds of the major of 5-on-3. Yeah, they gave up 2 goals, but I still think they came out of that pretty well, seeing it was a double 5-on-3.
Well, leading up to the majors, I felt like Ohio State was like really pressing that mess around line where they were getting physical, they were getting chippy, and all of a sudden I think they hit a find out line where the Nyes, Cooley, Snuggerud probably said on the bench before that shift, hey, let's send a message that's not okay to screw around with us. We're serious. We're trying to keep you from getting home ice. We don't really have a lot to play for. We're going to go after you. And you saw all 3 of them that shift go after Buckeyes.
Yes.
Tattoo them. We saw Cooley early in the shift. Then we saw Snuggerud, and then we saw Nyes. And I know after the fact, Bob said, I like the intensity. I didn't like the stupid penalties. But I think there's probably a little bit of hockey player in the Nyes, Snuggerud, Cooley going, well, they messed with the bull and they got the horns. And after that situation, you did not see the Buckeyes as chippy. Like it was more of a straightforward hockey game after that point, because I think they realized, okay, well, if we keep this up, it's going to be an interesting game. So
And
I don't think
Nyes
you
came
want
out
that.
really pissed, though, Viggs. When he was done with that penalty, he was pissed off.
For sure.
He channeled it just the way he needed to.
Well, you got to figure out where the line is and where to deliver it. And they obviously went over on those plays. But if you notice, they weren't kicked out of the game because the way the major penalties work, if there's contact ahead, if there's check from behind, and the player getting hit turns at that last minute in the judgment of the referee, it's only the major. It's not the automatic like it used to be. So in the ref's mind, the Buckeyes players kind of put themselves in vulnerable positions. Yes, in the college game, you have to ease up on those hits. But I think sometimes maybe in the NHL, maybe those aren't even penalties because the NHL players know that they have to protect themselves, so they're not going to turn. And so instead, those would have been just big blow-up hits. But in the college game, it's different. And I thought it was a real intense moment of the weekend. And, I've always said you'd rather have to tame the tiger than paint the stripes on a cat.
and Jack, after that, they did respond really well. They got stronger. And once they broke the seal, and, you get that Hughlin goal, and then 13 seconds later, Nyes ties it up. The roof comes off the place because it was just nuts. And all of a sudden, it's a completely different game.
Yeah, you give up 2 quick ones like that, and like you said, the roof blows off. I guarantee if you go back and look at the film, the Buckeyes bench was probably just, all right, we're out of it. Blew our chance. You know, we had our 5-on-3, we had our majors. It's done.
Well, you can see the goalie, Viggs. His response to that second goal is like, because that's not on him, really. I mean, he can maybe point the rebound, but it was such a boom, boom play off the rebound. I'm not sure he had much of a chance on that.
And I thought Dobish played a lot better on Saturday than he played on Friday. Friday, it looked like he wasn't taking the game super seriously. He was kind of goofing around.
Kicking the net off.
And then he took the interference when he stepped out of his crease and kind of challenged Brodzinski, and then nothing play. And just kind of the way he was joking around, it didn't seem like he was very intense.
Mm-hmm.
He was back at it Saturday. And through that first period, I thought he made some big saves, keeping his team in it. You know, when they get up 2-0, and then everything kind of fell apart from there.
And then Nysa finishes it up with a no-look pass to Mr. Cooley Viggs. It was ridiculous. And then it was kind of over after that. It really was.
Yeah, it just kind of felt like that. You know, that's one of those plays where you just go, no, what are you doing? And then it's like, oh, okay. You know, and looking back, I don't know if Nyes had anything to shoot at there. So
he went into a crowd.
Yeah, he went in the crowd. He lost his angle
right there.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that was pretty impressive to see. And that's, you know, the Cooley, Nyes, Snuggerud stuff doing what they do out there.
Oh boy, it was a fun weekend, Jack. We need to get you down to Mariucci. Have some fun with us.
Yeah, I'm looking at the schedule. I think let's knock on wood, but Big Ten championship, ceremonial puck drop. Let's get it set up.
The one surprise this weekend, Viggs, that we didn't know going into it, you know, Friday night, the lineups come out. Where's Lacombe? And and then obviously Faber was back, but at the time we didn't know a thing.
Yeah, I think a little surprising. Lacombe has never really been injured in his career, and it was something that wasn't during a drill. It was just kind of on the ice at practice where he had a lower body injury and he's walking around in a boot on Saturday. You know, everybody saw that when he went out there for the senior night ceremony that he was doing that. He's seeming like he's moving around pretty well, and probably just precautionary with him and make sure he's ready to go, because as well as this defense played without him in it, he adds another level. I thought one more thing from the weekend, Mike Kester filling in on that power play unit did a fantastic job. I've always thought he's had a really high hockey IQ, really good vision. You know, he's one of those defensemen where he's got his head up when he has the puck on his stick, and he finds seams that not everybody can find.
Just saw this in the chat. You're talking about ceremonial puck drop. How about a ceremonial penalty shot?
Son of a bitch.
We're just having fun with you. Hey, that's what it's all about. We're always having fun with each other here. So Lacombe was down. Chesley's still out. Motzko's talking. Maybe next weekend. I'm thinking he wants to hold him out as long as possible. Boy, Jack, it's just tough. You know, they've been pretty injury free all the year, and then all of a sudden, not the best time for this.
No, but it kind of goes back to the depth, right? And maybe I think they are deep enough. It's just like the caliber, you know, of players that we have. Losing him is big, but it's just that depth and getting Faber back. Like it kind of replaces one piece after another. But I think they can afford to lose it. But you know, you need full health rolling into the playoffs and going deep. So this bye week, that's really big. So that pays dividends. Get everybody an extra week off, and hopefully they take it easy this week, and he's fully recovered going into next weekend.
But boy, I really like Fish's game though, Viggs. He has done so well.
Yeah, I think people were a little curious about how Carl Fish would fit on this roster this year, you know, especially with Matt Stodiker being held out to get that extra redshirt year. So he'd have 2 years to play after this one. So if anything happened, Carl Fish would have to step in. And he did at times last year. And you saw, you know, he can move pretty well for a big guy, and he can handle a puck, and he can be physical. But I think there was just a little bit of concern what you had there. And he solidified himself as a fine option for the Gophers going forward. And I think he's cemented himself a role next year as well. You know, the 3 guys who came back, you never anticipate 3 guys like that coming back with Johnson, Faber, and Lacombe. And so you figured, you know, you're going to have to figure it out. But next year, those guys are going to be gone. So Fish is going to have a big role with this program going forward. And I think he's delivering more than a lot of people thought he had in the tank.
All right, Jack, this time of year, do the players pay attention to pairwise? Honestly.
Yes and no. It kind of depends, right? Like we can always think back to .001. I'll never forget about that, right?
Yes.
But I was looking at them the other day, and the Gophers have a pretty good lead.
They do.
So I don't think they're necessarily looking at it for themselves, but they want to kind of figure out, play the bracketology game, right? And kind of know who they might maybe be playing. But you know, everybody through 10 through 18 is just checking it every other day.
Oh boy.
But still, yeah, it's a bracketology game, and the Gophers want to know who they're playing. I've been seeing ones come out so far, and I like where the Gophers are, but who the hell knows what it's going to end up being.
What was the most recent one today? They put St. Cloud with Minnesota Vigs. I just don't see that just for attendance.
Well, right now there's a problem with 8-9 because you've got Penn State and Ohio State in those spots, I think is what it is. And so you don't want to have that conference matchup in the first round. So how do you avoid that? And the USCHO guys, I don't know if they're trolling me or just looking for clickbait, but they moved St. Cloud into the Gopher Regional, which is putting the 5 overall in a region with the 1 overall. And usually the NCAA protects that number 1 team, putting them up against 16, and then, you know, 2 against 15 and so forth. And you'd assume they would have the 8 seed overall. You know, the number 2 seed in the region, the 8 seed overall, be in the Gophers region. But, you know, USCHO having some fun, and I think they've caught us all with that trolling moment. But I don't think that's what I would do.
There's still a lot to happen though, too.
Still a lot to happen, but I don't think if I was the 5 seed either, if I'm Brett Larson, I don't like being put in a region with the number 1 overall seed either.
True.
You know, so I think both coaches would be unhappy with that situation.
It's interesting, Jack. You know, you got a team like Penn State going on the road. They're number 8 in the pairwise. They could easily lose this weekend. Stay 8, 9, 10. They'll probably stay in the top 10. Then they're not playing for 3 weeks. That's tough because you're not playing the semifinal and you're not playing the final. And then you got another week until the regional. That's a long rest to not play. And it could happen. It could happen the opposite. It could happen to Ohio State too, because they're going to be in that area too. So how does a team adjust to that? Because that's a long time.
Yeah, I don't like how the playoffs are set up to be stretched that far apart. It doesn't really make sense. You should end up just scheduling more regular season games, right? Or maybe they can, you know, play the Minnesota State high school winner or something like that. But it doesn't make sense, and it is tough because they can come in, they can make the tournament, and they can get, you know, they're locked where they are, and they're probably going to play a select number of teams. But even if the Gophers hypothetically drop next weekend, and then you go in and you're playing a 15 or 16 seed that won their conference tournament, that played their way in and is like in a groove, that's pretty tough to come up against in the first period. So it's kind of a wonky system, but usually coaches kind of figure out a way, you know, like, hey, we're going to do internal scrimmages. Maybe we bring some people in or something like that and try to keep it competitive, but it is definitely a downfall of the schedule.
But it is a strength of the conference this year, Vigs, that the number 8 overall pairwise is on the road for the playoffs.
Yeah, the Big Ten definitely took care of business in their non-conference games this year, and they were having the best strength of schedules by a wide margin over everybody else in college hockey because of that performance early in the year. And it's a tough situation right now. The Gophers are going to go down to Rochester this weekend for a little scrimmage action to try to keep as much a game weekend as possible. When asked about what to do with the bye, Bob said not what we did before Wisconsin, because that obviously did not work, and they came out pretty flat in both of those games. So they've got to try to keep things as competitive as possible, which is tough, I think, for Minnesota. I think once you get an opponent on the schedule, maybe things perk up. I'm not sure what the best solution is for the Big Ten. I think Bob is hoping that they can get like a neutral site somewhere for, a Final Five type situation. That would be nice. I really think that they need to have a campus site for this where they can just save it. I think that the teams in the Big Ten should bid on it and figure out who's going to host ahead of time. I figure Minnesota, Michigan would be two teams that would be bidding heavily on this kind of event. And I think both rinks have facilities to be able to handle this kind of action.
Michigan?
They had regionals there before, back when they had campus site regionals. They were able to figure it out.
The locker situation is not the greatest, though, is it?
No, it's an old building. You got to do some stairs, right, Jack?
Yeah,
but they can figure it out.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I think it's right. And like Cappy said last week, it's stretched out too long. They should be playing another weekend. And then, whatever the semifinal would be your quarterfinals. And then, like you said, a neutral site or an on-campus site for, a tournament. Then you're playing more. You're not playing. I mean, don't have the potential because, you get either Ohio State or Penn State's going to be sitting home for 3 weeks and they're in the tournament. That is not good for the league. You were talking about it last week. These coaches need to start thinking about not just their own team, but the league as a whole. And it's just things like that end up punishing one or two teams almost every year.
I mean, what's good for the Big Ten is having a team go out there and finally win an NCAA championship instead of always letting the NCHC have that on their mantle. When they go to the resume and say, oh, what's the best conference? And it's like, well, NCHC, they win all these national titles. Obviously, they're doing something right. Big Ten, that's got to be their perspective. How can we prepare our teams for the NCAA tournament? And playing games is the way to do that. And hopefully playing games in a good atmosphere, not at an empty Joe Louis, Little Caesars Arena or whatever, or an empty Excel. Put it on campus where there has potential to be some atmosphere. Compton Family Ice Arena at Notre Dame would be a good site for, Final Five Big Ten as well.
I think they just want fans. And it wasn't that bad in Minnesota, was it, Viggs, the last time? I mean, it wasn't great, but Jack,
we all want to compare it to
Jack, did you play at one of those last Big Ten tournaments at one of the big arenas? Or is that already? It was close.
No, we played at the Joe Louis, I believe, right? In Detroit.
Is that the Kyle Rao one? Maybe it is.
No, I think that was that the year Penn State won it for the first time, maybe?
It's pop. Yeah, I can't I have the memory of a goldfish. So
and then we lost to
Kyle Connor.
And then we lost to Michigan. Was this? I'm trying to think. Was that
Kyle Connor? I remember that.
Yeah, Kyle Connor. Yeah, that was at the Axe. But then, we
ask Eric Shearhorn about that one.
No,
that was a tough one.
Well, Shearhorn, we played him a lot in junior too, and he gave up a lot of goals to him at that point of his career. And obviously, Kyle Connor's turned out to be a pretty good NHL player. If you're going to get scored on by somebody, Connor, Comfer, and
Mott.
Oh.
Yeah. Yep. That was a pretty good team.
That's crazy.
So right now, Viggs, Minnesota is pretty close to being locked in at number one seed. I think the playoff scenarios right now, the only doubt is really Wisconsin right now, isn't it? If Wisconsin kind of loses this weekend, that kind of puts that very lower pairwise team kind of out of the mathematics of it all, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think someone was trying to figure it out. It gets really complicated.
Oh.
But if somehow Wisconsin were able to win and play Minnesota and beat Minnesota, that contributes to that 22% chance of being the 2 seed. When you pair that with Quinnipiac winning out, that's a potential for them to drop. And once Wisconsin's out, I think we'll see that Monte Carlo go closer to 100% for the number one overall.
Well, let's talk about that. We got Wisconsin heading to Michigan this weekend. Wisconsin got their first win on the road in well over a year, Jack. I believe it was sometime in 2021 was the last time they won a road game in the Big Ten. And they did it at Penn State last weekend, which is not an easy place to play at all.
No, I don't. who knows what's going on with the Penn or the Wisconsin program in general. Like college hockey is better when they're a
Yeah.
good team. You know, rivalries are there and whatnot. But yeah, Penn State is a very tough place to play. I think I know that better than anybody else. I think as we dropped 4 straight there,
Oh,
5 straight
yes.
there, or whatever it was. So yeah, that was fantastic. And now we haven't lost there in it seems like a
It's,
couple years,
I believe you are right. They have kind of switched that around.
which is awesome.
Um,
So
but I remember I was talking, we had that little party after the game Saturday night. I was talking to Frank Mazzacco about that, and he had no idea it had been that long. I want to say it was like November of 21 or sometime in 21 before they went on break was their last road win. And I think it was at Michigan, in fact, Vigs. But they'd have to do it again to keep Granato's coaching job, don't they? Because he might be gone Monday morning afterwards.
I feel like the ship has to have sailed on Granado sticking around Wisconsin for another year. I mean, this has just not been encouraging for them.
Mm-hmm.
They still have some talented recruits in the pipeline. I was just wondering if Jack talks to these high school kids about getting recruited and their perspective on different programs. And I know Wisconsin has attributes that attract people and keeps them interested in playing Big Ten hockey on that stage. But I just got to think among players that they see that and they either go, well, he won't be there when I'm playing there and it'll be better, or, I just put up with it still to go to that kind of program.
yeah, it's kind of it. Well, and you'll see too if there is a coaching change, what happens with recruits. Guys will lose their scholarships and whatnot, and then obviously you'll bring more guys in. But I think like one-on-one meetings with a coach during recruiting visits, like they're very persuasive, and that's who can get you to commit. But at the end of the day, it's the facilities, it's the culture, it's the history, etc. So I still think Wisconsin has, they're a top dog on what they have to offer. So if they change coaches and you see another 2-3 years of this, obviously that guy needs to get his recruits in and whatnot. But then if they're down the toilet, who knows where they're going to go? But I don't see that happening. I see them picking it up.
I hope not, because it's not good for the league.
No.
It's good for rivalries. Yeah, boo, you suck, but still, it's just not good for the league overall.
Right.
Can Wisconsin do anything this weekend against Michigan? Because, Cap, you was saying last week, Michigan's kind of an enigma. They can be the top team in the country, and then they can all of a sudden just play so stupid.
I think in a 3-game series, Michigan has way too much talent to get 2 losses.
Mm-hmm.
I could see maybe them losing a game.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe
Making it interesting.
Maybe they win big on Friday and don't come out Saturday and give up something, and all of a sudden the Wisconsin goalie stands on his head and they play one of those games like we've seen them play the last month.
Yep.
But Michigan's got so much talent. I mean, you look at Fantilli, he is a heck of a player. He's a little immature, and he's showed that over the last couple months. But
25 minutes, yeah.
They've got plenty of talent. Luke Hughes, I think, had a very disappointing first half and maybe a little bit of a disappointing World Junior, but he's heated up in the second half, and he's really shown the player he is and has put himself in the running for a lot of the postseason awards, and has really done a lot for Michigan.
What do you think, Jack? I mean, does Wisconsin? I mean, do they just
Looking.
go down quietly and that's it for Wisconsin this year? I mean, maybe that's the best for them, and just kind of slink out of this season and hope for the best next year.
I'm looking at their schedule and their games, and they were in Ann Arbor not too long ago, and it did not go well for them whatsoever. 6-2 and 4-7. So, and they've just been splitting everything after. So
yeah, and like I said, they got their first win in 2 seasons.
Yeah, I don't think it matters. Like I said, they might pick one up, but there's about a 2% chance that they find themselves out.
All right, well then, how about Michigan State heading to Notre Dame, Vigs? I think that's an interesting matchup because they're both really around 500 right now. Notre Dame's in a better position because they're at 13 right now, so a couple wins could really help them. Michigan State's in the scenario where they still haven't won a Big Ten playoff game yet. Do they match up well against Notre Dame? They probably do.
Well, I think this is probably the most interesting of the series coming up for the Big Ten because you're not sure totally what's going to happen. And I haven't seen Michigan State show a lot of skill. And so that's been the big question for me. They've got some freshmen who are older who have surprised and put up some points for them. Nightingale has seemed to turn a little switch in that program where they're playing a little bit harder. The thing about playing Notre Dame is Notre Dame seems to give teams space and almost tries to give them enough rope to hang themselves with. So if you can deal with that space and make plays and not feed the Irish, you can make some plays and you have a little bit more time and space. And I think that could benefit Michigan State. And I would not be surprised to see the Spartans come out this weekend advancing. I think it's a good, comfortable series for them where they can maybe find their legs a little bit. And so that's what I'm thinking is going to happen this weekend.
And Jack, that's another team that would really benefit the Big Ten if they really got it going, because they've been bad the entire Big Ten. They have never been good at all. So going into Notre Dame and knocking them out would be a big deal for that program.
100%. You said they haven't won a Big Ten playoff game?
Well, according to they hadn't won a game.
Wow.
In the playoffs. They got shut out. Well, they got swept was it 9 years now, or is it 10 or whatever it is?
10 years,
yeah. So,
I was looking at it and thinking maybe Michigan State might edge them this series, but now that you bring up that fact, it's probably sitting.
It could be in their heads.
Yeah, it's 100%. It's like when I was at the U and we had the Penn State bug in our head, like. You knew you're the better team, but it's in your head and you can't get over the hump. So
maybe that's where the coaching comes in, Viggs.
Well, I think having a fresh coaching staff helps. It's a different perspective. You're trying something different. You have different little systems. You have different little messages. The coach hasn't been through all that past, all that history. Bob brings that up about Penn State all the time. He's like, I don't have a lot of history going to Penn State and getting beat. I like going to Pagula. It's fun. It's good atmosphere, good crowd. And I'm sure Nightingale feels the same way. And I look at the odds, and it's Michigan State plus 135, Notre Dame minus 165. I think it's probably closer to a 50-50 type weekend. I really think Notre Dame and Jeff Jackson's team is not as disciplined as they've been. I don't know if they're as hard to play against.
True.
They almost have a couple players who are almost undisciplined enough to give power plays to the other team, make mistakes, get out of position. And you just see them like, it's almost like a false swagger with a couple of the Notre Dame players where you just go, you're just putting your team in trouble. And I just think that's going to cost them this weekend against Michigan State, who I'm sure knows the history and is hungry to change that narrative.
Uh-oh, we lost Jack for a second there. Well, then we've got Penn State going to Ohio State, Viggs. I mean, who would ever thought a first round would be between two top 10 teams in the country?
Should be a great matchup. I think Ohio State's a strong veteran team. I felt like they maybe lost a little bit of their edge against Minnesota trying to push the edge. And so we didn't see their best hockey. But the previous couple weekends, we'd seen good play from Ohio State. They played well against Michigan. And I just like the Buckeyes in this series. Penn State has struggled for offense down the stretch. And that's really the hallmark of their team, is getting lots of pucks on net, lots of scoring opportunities. And it just feels like they have lost their pressure and their cohesiveness. And when they get into their game plan where they're trying to choke off teams high in the zone and create turnovers, and when they're not doing that, that program kind of falls apart a little bit, because I don't think they can traditionally generate offense the way like a Minnesota or Michigan or Ohio State can. And so I think they're kind of in trouble right now. When they came to Mariucci, I thought Penn State was on top of their game. When I've seen them the last couple of weeks, I feel like they've fallen off. This is a bad time of year to fall off.
Definitely. Jack, what was it like to go in and play at Ohio State? I'm guessing you didn't have very big crowds at all.
No, honestly, I think we had more Minnesota fans at those games. It's quiet. It's very quiet. They don't get a very good student section. It's such a big rink too that even if you do, it doesn't really matter. So it's not intimidating whatsoever. It's probably the Notre Dame, them, like the least intimidating arenas to play in. There's no crowd sway at all. So I'm confident if I'm Penn State going in for sure. It's crazy that they're the 6th seed. Don't know how they manage that throughout the regular season, and they're ranked as high as they are. But I like Penn State going in.
Well, I think the big thing with Penn State is they took care of business in non-conference. Sometimes when you play a softer schedule, if you lose a game, it really hurts you. But if you can get through and not drop any of them, you're going to be fine. And then when you pair that with how strong the Big Ten is this year, no loss in the Big Ten hurts anyone in the pairwise. So even though they haven't been very good down the stretch, they won enough to protect themselves. And that's why you're seeing, that the tide has raised all the ships in the Big Ten. Like even in Wisconsin, as bad as they are, they're still like in the 30s. It's not like they're in the 50s or 60s.
Yeah, they're 33 right now. That's not, it's halfway.
How many teams in the CCHA are in the top 30?
Or the ECAC. I was looking at some of those teams that Quinnipiac was playing, 48th, 56. I'm like, wow. Mm-hmm. And I feel bad for Quinnipiac because I'm sure they've got a great team, but their competition most of the time is just terrible. Brown, 48, Yale, 55. I mean, that's not good to be going into a tournament. I mean, yeah, there's a couple good teams there, but that's tough on Quinnipiac too. But then, Ohio State has filled up their arena a little bit better at the end of the season, Vigs. I know they had a pretty full house when Michigan was there. An outdoor game obviously was a little different, but even in that last indoor game, I should say, was pretty full. But then maybe the fans, it's Penn State. We don't really care. It could be a kind of a ghost town, and maybe Penn State could take advantage, like Jack's talking about.
Well, the shot is just too big of a building for them.
Yeah.
There's just not enough hockey fans in Ohio to fill that size arena. They would be so much better off with this new rink that they're going to be building on campus, mainly for the women. If someone just stepped up and said, okay, here's an extra $30 million. Let's get 5,000 seats in here. Let's make it a rink for both. That would be crucial, I think, for Ohio State's long-term health as a hockey school. Instead, if they keep going down this road, it's tough. They have that bad atmosphere all the time and not an intimidating place to play, like Jack just said.
All right, another game that's happening tomorrow night. Your Skippers, who are they playing? Give us a scenario of the games here, or the game here on Thursday, dear Jack.
Sure. Yeah, 7:00 puck drop at Braemar versus Chan. You can't get a ticket. It's been sold out since yesterday at about 3. I think tickets went on sale for the public at like 3:00, and by 3:07 all the tickets were gone. So it's gonna be a good game. We dropped the game to them as one of like a 4th or 5th game of the season, 4-1 with 2 empty netters. So tightly contested game then. It's kind of a revenge game. So it's exciting. You have all these section championships are basically state tournament contenders where you're seeing a lot of them get knocked off that deserve to be there. Wayzata gets knocked off tonight. Definitely a team that's deserving to be in the state tournament. So there's definitely going to be a team going home tomorrow that deserves to be there and won't be. So super excited. It's going to be a great atmosphere. And
it must be weird because, back in the day, for the longest time, they were always playing Met Center, Mariucci, some of the bigger arenas. Maybe, when St. Thomas gets the arena, this is where some of these games could go, Vigs, because, Edina playing, Wayzata tonight at Big, 2,500 seats, but it's just not quite the same as we've seen games at Mariucci full for those games.
Well, the Coliseum,
now I can imagine getting those tickets. Yeah, the Coliseum, getting tickets for like Jack said, sells out in 5 minutes. That's just a packed place. Sure, the atmosphere's fun, but it's a little different than it used to be.
Yeah, Aldrich could be a tough place to get a ticket. I think it's tough. Hopefully, when Minnesota gets their rink down to a smaller width, it becomes a site again for the high school league to figure out how to do section finals there. I think that was one thing that maybe coaches didn't like, having the biggest game of their year played on a big Olympic ice sheet. Yeah. Because, if you have a team with a couple good defensemen, especially on the big sheet, they can just hold the puck and choose when to make their plays. So I think Mariucci could be a site down the line. I know Ritter's been in play for some games at times, probably not because they're having the Final Five there for the women coming up, but it would be nice to have bigger crowds for these games because they're so much fun.
I think St. Thomas could be a good honeypot for that type of game.
I'd love to see it back in Mariucci. And I don't know what the rights are like that, if it's contracts or whatnot, but we'll see it. Hopefully see it going back to Mariucci next year with the
it is expensive though too. I mean, Mariucci is the most expensive ice in the state, Vigs. Unless you're talking about the X or something like that. Excuse me.
Yeah, but for some of these section finals, I feel like it'd be worth it for the sections to figure it out if the dates work.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully it will, because like you said, Mariucci's going down to 89 feet next year. That should make a difference. Jack was told when he was recruited that they were going to do that, and they never did for you. So
crazy. Nope. I was a victim of the Olympic ice too. My sophomore year of high school, we got absolutely buzzed by Benilde when we were the number 1 team in state.
Really?
So just you were saying, they had some really good defensemen. Collins, Glover were sophomores, but they had good players, and they just whacked us, and we whacked them earlier there on normal ice. So it's definitely something that coaches shy away from. And a little weird insight, but I've talked to a few buddies about this, like playing at Ritter and stuff. You can't play men's hockey at Ritter because the glass has absolutely zero give. It's
really? It doesn't have it's not spring loaded?
No, it's just it's like concrete. So when we practice there, if you got hit into the boards, it's like you're running into a brick wall. So it's you're asking for people to get hurt. It sucks playing. I think it'd be super super fun. The glass hurts.
I didn't know that, because when I'm shooting on the boards at Mariucci, I mean they give. I mean they're spring loaded. You can't be on the glass because it's going to move and it's going to hit you if you're up against it.
I remember Breck had an old ice rink on 62, and one of the boards was right up against a concrete wall. So like the entire boards were just like concrete. And I remember if you went into there, absolutely no give. And it was just crazy. It's just like, you probably didn't even need glass there because you could just put it off the masonry blocks.
Well, it'll be interesting if they change, because the ice for Ritter is going to happen the next summer, right, Vigs? So it'll be interesting if they change the boards there.
Yeah, maybe. I think it would be great so that they could prep it for both.
I mean, Jack hated practicing there. I mean, like you said, you hitting if it's that hard, that's not fun.
No, you're gonna have guys separating shoulders and whatnot.
So Jack, how's your role on the coaching staff evolved over the year? What's it been like? And I know a lot of Gopher fans want to hear about more and how his season's gone.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I initially got the opportunity to take the assistant coaching job for the forwards, but I just couldn't fully commit. New wife, work, didn't want to kind of go half foot in and say I'm going to be a full coach. So I gave myself the title of, what was it? It was player and culture development. That was my made up name. But no, I'm labeled as an assistant coach. I help the forwards and the D. I try to get to practice a few times a week. I've been on the bench 3 times this year. It was our coaches, when the snowstorm hit last week, our forward and D coach couldn't get there. So the first game that I had to actually coach was a section game. I'm like, you're kidding me. So like, this is the way it's going to happen.
Hey, thrown to the fire. That's how you learn.
Absolutely. And the other 2 games I helped coach were both against Eden Prairie, and they're nail biters. So I don't know if I have the heart for it to be on the bench. Just it's so stressful, but I've been helping out the forwards and D. It's been a ton of fun getting in the locker room in between periods during the games. And I really try to pick out a couple players in between periods and focus on individual things. We have our coaches to talk about the team stuff, the system stuff, but I want to get in 1 or 2 guys' ears, talk to them about something I'm seeing just to improve their game for for the rest of the night. So it's been really fun.
Is it hard to filter it just to like one or two things when you're coaching?
It is. Yep. You kind of figure out as you go, right at the beginning of the season, your brain's on overload and you want to just spew stuff to kids, but you kind of have to figure out what their intake capacity is and who receives stuff how, and how you can talk to certain guys and how hard you can lean on certain guys and whatnot. But I've kind of figured it out and learning every single day. So I'm excited for the future, excited to keep doing it.
So what's more been like as a player to be around?
He's electric. It's funny, off the ice he's quiet, but then you'll catch him, laughing, smiling, being loud, being energetic. So he's kind of got a scale, depends on who he's around, but he's a super, super nice kid. The sky's the limit for this guy. He kind of came out of nowhere last year and the past few years, and his trajectory scale, it's just shooting straight upwards, but he's just so much talent trying to like just mold it, and work on it. He's still very, very young, and who knows how long he has, high school, juniors, etc., before he gets to the Gophers, but they're going to have a very, very talented kid that likely will not stick around for 4 years because of how talented he is. So that's if you want to catch a glimpse of him tomorrow, absolutely one of the best skaters in the state, and the guy can hunt on the forecheck like nobody else. So it's really fun.
That's the only thing I haven't enjoyed about the high school hockey since I've been covering Gopher hockey, because you get the tournament time. I mean, it's a little better now. I can watch more of the games.
Mm-hmm.
The finals always in the playoffs for Gophers. I mean, it's always, championship game. We're always at Mariucci. And
right.
So you kind of, you miss it, but it was the same with even the WCHA. It was like you played against Alaska Anchorage that weekend and half the place is gone because they're probably over at the X, which is not so terrible because it's such a cool thing.
You guys remember the Michigan series? What was that? My junior year, I think.
With 400 of your friends.
Yeah. My family was half the crowd. We've talked about this before, but that was tough.
That image I took that I got a lot of grief on was in the paper last week.
Really?
Yeah.
How to get it brought up now?
Viggs?
Well, Randy Johnson did a story for the Star Tribune about the return of fans to Mariucci Arena, and that's a pretty obvious low point in fan engagement with the Pride on Ice. And so to go from that level to where they're at right now is a complete 180. I was just looking at the ticket scan data, and we'll be putting that on GPL here pretty soon. But the crowds, the last 6 home games have all been really, really good. And I think that's important for Gopher hockey. It's important for the University of Minnesota. I was talking with some people in the administration, and they're very happy with the way the fans have come back and have responded to a program that's back to where they want to be. And they've had a great year of fundraising. I think last year was their best year ever in terms of donations and contributions. And that allows them to do things like shrink the rink and eventually make improvements to the concourse and the seating bowl. And if the fans keep showing up, those things are going to happen faster.
It's exciting because, like you said, he had a picture of that Michigan game that I took, the big panorama. And then he had a picture he took of the student section during the BigTen championship last year, which took up not just 3 sections. They went 5 sections packed. And we had never seen that in any of Gopher hockey history, Viggs, ever.
No, that was quite the crowd. I remember hearing the Rouser during warmups, and you're just going, what happened here? This is amazing. And the game just, turned out pretty hot, but oh well.
Yeah, the game obviously didn't turn out the way we wanted it to, but yeah, I bought tickets that game. I was in one section over from the students, and they were all bleeding over into our section. They all got kicked out, and it was amazing. They're not doing the 5 sections this year, Viggs. They're only doing 3. Unfortunately, I would love to see them do that again, but
yeah, maybe they'll sell some extra standing room. But they did that for the Michigan game, because they were having so many issues with their regular ticket holders showing up,
Yeah.
and the redemption rates were looking like 65% for most of the arena. And so they said, well, let's open it up to more students so the building's actually full. Well, then they kind of hit that tipping point of like, well, actually people were showing up for the game and wanting to use their tickets, so it got a little crowded. And, you sure want to have the fans that pay, the $25, $30 or whatever it is for tickets getting their seat. So, it's a balance.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to the playoffs with semifinals. Who are we gonna see coming to Mariucci next weekend, Viggs? Who gets out? You think it's a Michigan State?
I think it's gonna be Michigan State because I think Ohio State's gonna get through. I think Michigan's gonna get through. I think Sparty's gonna get their first playoff win and get 2 of them.
Wow. All right, Jack. Who comes to Mariucci next weekend?
I'm going to go with my gut and agree. It's going to be Michigan State. They'll get over the hump.
Really?
Get over the hump.
Viggs,
you like it because the Michigan State does not match up well against Minnesota at all.
Yeah, I mean,
they have struggled.
The only teams you worry about, I think, would be Michigan, Ohio State, and Penn State. And the rest of the teams of the Big Ten, you're not too worried about as a Gopher fan. But this year, this Gopher team is something special. So if they're engaged, they're going to be tough to beat down the stretch here.
I ran into Mike Carmen down in the locker room after the 4-0 game, and he's like, "This is the year. This is the year. This team is good. He was pretty giddy about it." And
there's a lot to be giddy about.
Yeah.
I mean, the power play's clicking. The penalty kill's been good. They're getting good goaltending. They're showing their depth on the blue line right now, dealing with injuries. It sounds like the players are bouncing back from their injuries and getting back in the lineup and want to be back. They have depth players that play positive shifts and allow you to connect things together.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of things to like right now with Gopher hockey. And I just hope that we see Jack at Excel next week. I'm going to the Thursday both sessions for the high school tournament. So I'm hoping to see the skippers there. I've got a group of people that invited me along for one of the best days of the year. It's right up there with the NCAA regional weekend for me. And to see all the high school games that Thursday when everyone's dreams are still alive is a great day.
A lot of work is not done on those days, Jack. I'll be on my computer and I'll have those games up. Even starting next Wednesday with the A games. I'm streaming it. I got the big screen here. It's fun.
100%. Absolutely. I did that last week with the girls tournament. As soon as it kind of hits, I start streaming everything, like watching anything. Granted, I was following Tonka along in that too, but so much fun. I enjoy watching high school hockey and college hockey more than NHL hockey. I think it's just more exciting. Yeah. You don't know what to expect, and stuff pops off at any time.
I obviously I do like the high school, but yeah, like you were saying, Viggs, regional weekend is always, I've loved it. Just, I must say, it's great for the teams that they've gone to 4 days now, that day off. That's great. But boy, that Saturday when they just had 3 days, I mean, you had 6 games and it was just, sometimes I just stay in my PJs all day and just watch them. And because it is just intense. Oh, it's just my favorite weekend of the year.
6 games a day is a little too much for the regionals because you're trying to watch everything. I like the way they've gone now, but it's still a great time. It's as Bob said, it's banner season, so good luck to all the teams out there.
You guys got anything else for us? It's a pretty decent show on a non-playing week. Viggs, you got anything?
Like I said, I've got the scan ticket data for GPL again, so look for that probably the next week. And I am going to be putting together a little feature story that I've been working on all year. It's finally going to come out next week. Look on GPL for it.
All right.
Love it.
Well, thanks for joining us, Jack.
I'm going to put a question on you guys real quick before we get to any games this weekend. Because I got all the conferences list out. Before there's any games played, and you can skip the first round. Who are you guys' conference projected winners for playoffs?
Well, I think Minnesota, BigTen. Denver, NCHC, that's pretty easy. St. Cloud could sneak in there just because it'll be here. I think Quinnipiac gets upset, maybe. Harvard takes them out. And boy, couldn't it really mess up. I mean, RIT is what, at 22 right now, Vigs? They're in the early 20s. They're expected to win their conference. Hockey East is where I think it could get interesting because you've got Boston. Was it Boston University? That's kind of really the only team there.
Mm-hmm.
All it takes is one team, like Northeastern, who was on the bubble, who kind of dropped away. It could take a Northeastern. All of a sudden, they're going to be knocking out Minnesota State, Mankato, because Minnesota State, Mankato, right on the border right now, which forces them to win their conference. So it's all over the place. But I think Mankato will pull out that one too. Okay, Viggs, what do you think?
I definitely like Minnesota, Denver. I like the thoughts on Harvard and Northeastern. I'm right with you on both those.
Okay.
Harvard is probably the most talented team in ECAC, in my opinion. They are growing over the year, and I think they're going to do well in a conference tournament situation. I feel like Quinnipiac just is not going to do well in the tournament. They didn't do well in the NCAAs last year. I just kind of think that's maybe a trend with them. Not to drag this too far, as Rand Pecknold in the World Junior. I did not like how Team USA handled the adversity with him behind the bench. So I've got some issues there with that team. Don't know a ton about Atlantic hockey. RIT's the team. I kind of like Niagara a little bit, but I don't, I have no idea what's going to go on there. And then Mankato, I don't know if they can do it. Tech is looking good. Mankato didn't exactly have a great first part of the year.
Yeah, it really hurt.
They're finding their identity, and now they get in a stretch where I think CCHA is not the strongest league this year. So we'll see.
And they could just squeak in and end up facing somebody like a Quinnipiac.
Yeah.
Who are your final four picks? I saw that. Yeah, Steve Larson.
How are you even supposed to predict that at this point?
Yeah.
I want to see give me a bracket first. I can't even tell you 4 teams in a regional.
Well, I don't see Quinnipiac getting in. I don't think Quinnipiac gets to a Frozen Four, and they're probably a number 1 seed. So I think Minnesota and Denver are the 2 teams that are strong number 1 seeds. And then you're starting to look at that next band of teams, those 2-3 seeds,
Michigan,
maybe even
St.
a 4
Cloud.
seed. Yeah. I mean, you could really see Denver, Minnesota, Michigan, and maybe like a Northeastern, Harvard, BU as the 4th team.
Mm-hmm.
Even Ohio State, Dobish could, get his head straight after that really bad Friday night against Minnesota and play like he did in the first period Saturday over an entire regional, and he could get Ohio State through.
It's going to be fun. I'm excited. Thanks for coming on, Jack.
I appreciate it. I look forward to it.
We
Hey, all my
appreciate you
Wednesdays are
coming on.
cleared. All my Wednesdays are cleared for the rest of the year.
I still want to get you and Shearhorn on at the same time. He couldn't.
Okay.
I tried. Shear couldn't make it this week.
Probably a big pickleball match, the Chipotle Cup.
The Chipotle.
Probably
Could
got in
be.
the way. Probably got in the way.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for this week's GPL podcast. Obviously, we want to thank Jack for coming on with us once again. We'll be back next week and hopefully preview that Big Ten semifinal against who? We're not really sure who. We'll just have to wait and see. For those of you watching live, stay tuned for some overtime. For the rest of you, we'll catch you next week on the GPL podcast. All right, what you got there, Viggs? That was a good, solid opening of that can this time.
Yeah, good can open sound on this one.
Oh, yeah, it was a good one.
So this one's from Modest Brewing here in the North Loop of Minneapolis.
Okay.
And this is called Gifts of the Sacred Father. So as we get this Lent period, Doppelbock beers become very popular. They're kind of like real bready, malty, caramely, yeasty. This one is 8.5% ABV. So it's a good solid Doppelbock. Going modest. Cheers.
Cheers to you. Jack's still here. Well, he just went off for a second. We'll bring him right back up when he's back.
Maybe he's bringing his beverage.
He might be going to get his beverage. That would be good. WMU is not a bad choice either. You were saying that they would be a good matchup for Minnesota because you think they would do well against Minnesota.
Well, I think Western's
or Minnesota would do well against them. Sorry.
I think Western's kind of a one-line team. So that's a series where I think you see Brock Faber matched up against that line all game, and he is the shutdown defender. We talk about how Lacombe is the offensive player, Faber's the shutdown, and Ryan Johnson's a little bit of both.
All right. Boy, Chan, that's so weird for me. I saw their uniform for the first time tonight in a photo. I didn't even realize what the colors were or anything. Such a new program for us old school people,
Right.
Though I know Kevin Kurt's kid's been over there playing youth hockey.
I get confused because it's Chaska Chan for youth, and then
it is Chaska Chan for youth. Yes,
and then they split for high school, which has been interesting because that Chaska Chan youth program is a juggernaut. And then they go all their different ways. You got Breakaway Academy, Chaska kids, Chanhassen kids. I know Kester, was always trying to get over that hump and just couldn't quite get there. So it's an interesting program. Jack's going to stay quiet. He's not giving any message board material.
No bulletin board.
Oh, I don't blame you there. I didn't even learn until recently, Viggs, that Apple Valley and Burnsville had combined. I had no idea.
Mm-hmm.
That's just
weird stuff is happening in hockey and sports all over the place. Like it's even worse for some of the girls' programs. Like there's this one called the Phoenix, which is like 6 schools, which all used to kind of have their own team. And it's baffling to me. There's so much. I know we talked about this last time, Jack, in the OT about specialization, but I think some of that stuff is really starting to impact high school sports where we have all these co-ops and whatnot. And it's difficult, I think, because we have such a strong community model in Minnesota. I feel like it's kind of cracking just a little bit right now.
Yeah, no, 100%. You have Gentry Academy winning the state tournament, right? And people are claiming they're from everywhere. And then people will say, well, the Minnetonka girls team has people from everywhere. Edina has people from everywhere. I don't know how much truth is behind each one or whatnot. But there's definitely, it seems like there's a transfer portal in the state of Minnesota, for sure. And I think they'll put their foot down a little bit on it, next year or in the coming years, somewhat. But what are you gonna do? I don't understand the Gentry thing too much, just because it seems like it's a Shattuck model, so that doesn't make too much sense to me. But we'll see if there's enough uproar. I remember hearing on K-Fan like 2 weeks ago that high school coaches were saying they're just not going to schedule them. Like they'll refuse to play them. So super curious to see where that goes, and then maybe they just show up at the state tournament and roll people.
Well, that's what happened. That's what happened to the Gentry girls program this year, is they got to play hardly anyone. I think they had to play like a Thunder Bay team to get like some games in before the tournament because they just couldn't schedule enough games during the year. And so I think that's what's going to happen. It's challenging. MSHSL is not an enforcement agency. They set the rules, but they don't really investigate, and they leave that up to the athletic directors a little bit to figure out. And we've had a lot of churn in athletic directors in the state, and it's just not great right now. We're in a weird spot.
Yeah. I mean, we're also blessed at the same time. You can look at both sides of the road. Like, hey, these people from Arizona or California or whatever, they want to come here and they want to play high school hockey here, which is really cool. You'd love to see the talent spread out at the end of the day. But if people want to come play here, welcome them with open arms, as long as it's kind of getting spread out somewhat.
Well, I think the Gentry thing is so difficult for people because they're like a charter school, public school, and they have this hockey fee on top.
Yeah.
So they're not like a true private. Like you can understand when people want to pay tuition and go to Hill Murray or they want to go to Holy Angels or whatever, they're Benilde, they're paying tuition, they're going there. Yes, there's financial aid and whatnot that can happen, but that's kind of a different thing that I think people see this charter school where they're getting public money and they're spending all this attention on athletics, specifically hockey. It's a weird situation. If I was an AD and I was losing kids to Gentry, I probably wouldn't play them either. I get it. I get that. But at the same time, some of these private schools, you got to respect what they're doing a little bit because, they put together a good product that people want to play. Minnetonka puts together a great product. People want to go play there. Like I look at some of the facilities at Minnetonka. I bet they rival some college hockey facilities. It's pretty impressive what that community has invested in their kids.
Yeah, because it wasn't like that a long time ago. I remember going to the old arena there, and it was barely an arena.
Are you talking Minnetonka A and B then, or what was it?
I don't even know. It was kind of overhanging the ice. Oh, it was so long ago. Was it the old Pagel Arena?
Pagel has the track around it.
Yeah, Pagel's got some quirks, but it's a fine rink.
I love the track. I honestly wish every single high school arena had a track because it adds such an element to it with spectators standing right on top of you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty fun.
I remember I opened Egan's rink. We were the sacrificial team that had to play Egan in their new building, and they had like a railing where you came out of the locker room and you just had all these people on top of you, just like yelling at you. And it's like, what is going on? It was probably like one of my first high school games, and it was their first game in that building. And it's a fun feature of a rink, I think, to have people overhang everything. I like that drawbridge we saw that rink in Canada. Did you guys see that?
I did see the video.
You had to come out of your locker room, and then like the drawbridge lowers you to the ice, and you gotta like walk down in your skates, and sometimes it gets stuck, and you gotta. Yeah.
Only in Canada.
Right.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Wow. Just crazy.
But I don't know. I was just kind of having this realization the other day that I wonder if the specialization in sports for kids might also impact the ability for community teams to have coaches. And just like all these parents now grew up playing one sport and their kids play 3 or 4, but are their youth teams going to have enough coaching, or are they going to have to be pay for play coaches all the way up now too? So something I was just thinking about the other day. It's just like, are we going to have enough coaches to coach our kids 20 years from now the way we have things set up? Or is it all going to be AAA, hockey camp, baseball camp, tennis camp, golf camp? This is all going to be specialized, and it's going to be hard to get any coaching. Because like the Andover teams, it's a bunch of volunteer parents who built that program. Laverne, bunch of parents who said, we want to help our kids get better. And both their high school team, boys and girls, made the state tournament this year. Minnetonka, you got Jack and Steve on the bench helping out coach their community. Some of you got some guys can also coach baseball or football or whatever, but you need a community with a lot of people who want to give back for these things to be successful. So,
yeah.
Who is Rockridge now?
That's like Hibbing, and
I don't think it's Hibbing. Because I saw that they played Hermantown, and I thought Hibbing lost actually the semifinal. Hermantown beat Rockridge. And old movie guy, all I can think about is Blazing Saddles and whatnot with Rockridge. But maybe somebody in chat will say, is it Cloquet? Is it something like that? Or Eveleth, Virginia?
Okay.
I mean, there's a lot of teams up north that are just gone now. You got Eveleth, Virginia. Yeah. What happened to Greenway? Probably Greenway, Gilbert. There you go.
Mm-hmm.
And those teams are you just have to combine them because there's just nobody up north anymore.
The ghost towns.
A couple other students. That's probably why it's Rockridge. Evelyn, Virginia, Gilbert, probably Greenway. Wow. Evelyn not having their own team makes me sad. Well, that's just how
Just
it
a
is these
numbers
days.
game. Just a
Yeah.
numbers game, right?
There are no.
Did you guys see the Pionk article in the Duluth News Tribune the other day?
Yep.
That basically talked about how Hermantown is stealing players and money from the surrounding communities with their hockey program, and how Hermantown will never be like a big city. Like some of these schools in the metro, as the city expands, there's room for people to grow and they can become a AA school eventually with that kind of enrollment. But Hermantown by design will always be a small enrollment school that's just attracting these players. And he was saying that if you're going to do that, you're going to bring these players, you have to go AA. Or if you don't, you have to be a true Class A school. You can't play AA schools. You can't play the big schools in the tournaments, and then you just go to Class A.
Yeah,
that is a lot of schools for Rockridge.
There's a lot of schools. Probably hard to make the varsity team.
Wow.
Yeah, the synopsis was play if you want to be single A, you have to play an entirely single A schedule. If you don't, if you want to be double A, because he's complaining that Hermantown plays a double A schedule and like pulls kids in to play double A schedule, and then they'll make the state tournament, et cetera, et cetera. So, he's the I'm a high school coach, so I don't want to dive into it, but I read the comments and stuff on it, and people are saying he's the new coach of whatever.
There's a Catholic school in Duluth that's just started.
And he's the head coach.
They don't have a high school team yet, but
yeah.
he will be at some point. But I just think it brings up interesting things about high school athletics and what the goal is and what's the best route. Because I don't think you ever want to be that tier 1, tier 2 thing.
No.
Where the top 64 teams
that was a disaster.
And then like the next 64 teams were in the bottom. And I remember there was like a Matamidi team that went like 3-17, and they might have won the thing.
Rosemount. Are you thinking Rosemount?
Maybe it's Rosemount.
Rosemount got to the title game.
Yeah, and they won 3 games.
They were in the Lake Conference, and they were playing like Jefferson, Burnsville, all the Apple Valleys that were really good at that time. So they had, they were getting their butts kicked all the time, but all of a sudden they went and played the terrible teams who don't have a great schedule, and they make it all the way to the championship game. I think they made it. It might have been against. There you have. That was Rosemount. Was it against War Road? Maybe they might have been beaten by War Road.
Well, I'm sure War Road made the top 64.
I actually, it was something weird that year where they had a down year.
Okay, we could ask Jess Myers on March 11th. What happened that year? You'd probably tell us. I don't want to get you in trouble, Jack. What do you got in your glass, though? What do you got in your glass?
Yeah, what are you drinking?
I see some brown liquor there.
I got Bolt bourbon, and it's from the same bottle that was where we finally made it down. It's from the same bottle whenever I was on the first episode of the time. That tells you how much I drink it. I'm finally running out like 2 years later.
Yeah. Well.
See, when you coach the skippers, you don't have to have drinks afterwards. You're just so happy all the time that.
Well, I still
smooth sailing.
I still get stressed. It's so much easier watching the game from up in the stands and then going down in between periods, and then you hop on the bench to coach a game. And your first few shifts, you're like, "Holy shit, this is fast!" Like, how are you supposed to?
Were you doing lines and matchups and stuff like that?
Yeah, and our first section game against Chaska, we have 3 pretty good lines, so we're able to just kind of just roll, so we don't have to try to match up too much. But we're the away team tomorrow because Chan is the 1 seed, so it'll be interesting to see how the coaches. I'll try to watch that from the stands. How the coaches match lines. It'll be fun to watch.
Yeah, that just sounds weird to me. Chan, the 1 seed, boy. That would definitely be if they were to win, that would be their first trip to state, wouldn't it? I don't recall them being there. Maybe youth hockey below that, they've been good, but
their youth program's been awesome. And a lot of those kids go to Breakaway Academy. That's like Snuggerud.
There it is. Greenway beat Rosemount in the T2 championship. Rosemount finished 620 and 1. And I believe those 6 wins were the playoffs, or probably 5 of them. You had the 3 games of section, semifinal or quarterfinal and semifinal. They won 1 game this year, that year in the Big Ten, in the late conference,
the regular season.
Yeah,
great.
Wow. Yeah, that T2 team that didn't work so well, because I remember Greenway not even being that happy. They were like, here's the trophy. They were not happy at all.
Wonder what the score was if they have those stats.
Oh, it's out there.
Gonna put me to work here.
Oh, there used to be all that stuff up on, what was it, the old high school site? I haven't been to those high school sites in a while. It's so different now. Everything is so web. You can find just about anything these days. I mean, Viggs, you even found one of the old videos you posted earlier today. The old
I went down
to 4 videos.
I went down a rabbit hole because I saw Jared Klein on there, talk about the old music videos. I was like, what do those look like? And so, Jack, I don't know if you have ever heard of this, but WCCO TV used to do the state tournament, and they would have like a crew go to the high school, and they would shoot like a music video with like people lip syncing and like different like cheesy stuff,
partying and stuff. Yep.
Yeah. And so like the one I posted is like, Karate Kid Best Around was a big song around this time because Karate Kid was new. And so they had like this, Karate Kid themed music video for Grand Rapids. Mm-hmm. And they just had all these cheerleaders and players in the band. And I remember they did that for a couple of years, I think, with every school that
they
did it probably. And it was just hilarious. And can you imagine that today? Like your kids make the state tournament and you're like, okay, guys, well, KSTC is going to come shoot a music video today. So you're out of school this afternoon and we're going to do this. And it's going to be broadcast on Thursday during the game.
And there was a shorter turnaround time too back then as well, because the section finals were usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday and then you're playing the tournament the next week. So there was a very short turnaround for all that stuff. It wasn't like now, like I said, you guys will find out tomorrow night. That's a full week before you play again. It wasn't like that back in the day.
And it was weird with the snowstorm because we were supposed to play Thursday, Saturday, but our first game against Chaska got pushed up to Tuesday. So it was Tuesday, Saturday, Thursday. So a lot of gaps. We're talking about gaps in between games and whatnot. I wouldn't mind them doing, Tuesday, Thursday, section championship, Saturday, roll into the state tournament.
Mm-hmm. That's what it was.
Right.
For years and years. Yep. Things change. That's when old guys like me, gray-haired guys, yell at clouds. Because that's what we do.
Some of the old ways were better.
Channel 4 did an excellent job on that broadcast back in the days. And they got really good TV ratings on it too.
Mm-hmm.
I think Rosen said eventually that. Well, also back then, CBS television was terrible. It wasn't like back in the in the 80s. Nobody watched Nobody watched CBS. It was all NBC and their Thursday night lineups and all that stuff. They weren't good as a network. So when they had the state tournament, they were getting great ratings. But then at the end of the 80s, early 90s, CBS TV actually picked up and the network wouldn't even let them do anymore. And that's when 45 took over. Or actually, Channel 9 might have taken over for a couple of years, but then 45 took over from them.
And I have to think the two classes probably changed some of them.
It did
around the tournament too.
It did, because Channel 4 broadcast every single game.
Mm-hmm.
You start Thursday, you had the 4 quarterfinals. Friday, you had all the first two games in the afternoon.
Consolation
games, and then third, and the semifinals, and then even on Saturday, you had a consolation final, third place, and championship. That all of them were on television. So that part I actually like, because there were some really good consolation games. It's not like they were going up and going over to Mariucci or some other arena. They were playing them all at the Civic Center.
And they didn't seed the team, so you never knew what you were going to get. Like you could have the top 2 teams of the state playing in the quarterfinal.
Yep.
Really?
Yeah.
Yep. There were no seatings, just seatings in the sections.
Yep.
How do they figure out the schedule?
I think
It
they used
was-
to rotate
It was
the
predetermined.
matchups. It was predetermined. So like you knew
This
going
section
in.
would play that section. This section would play that section.
Ick.
Yeah. And then when you played in the afternoon, you were in the afternoon bracket. So I think I remember that even. So I remember that you played Thursday. If you played in the afternoon Thursday, you played like the second game afternoon Friday. Because the
I think
consolation game was
the
before
tickets
that.
were you had a consolation game and then you had a championship game.
Yep.
And then you had a consolation game and a championship game. So
Mhm.
like if you played in the evening session, you were playing the evening session the next day too.
Mhm.
Gotcha.
So it was kind of cool for ticket holders too. You know, they could go to, a place and maybe catch the third period of the consolation game and then be there for the championship style game. So always fun.
Yeah, but like I said, it changed with all the two tournaments, and
Yeah, the
They
tiers
just can't
didn't last
televise
very
it much.
long. Yeah.
well, but it's still the same amount of games.
Mhm.
So
Somebody asked me on Twitter who I think will be in the Big Ten awards. And I'm a little curious to hear your perspectives. I am a voter for the Big Ten awards this year,
Mhm.
and I've been thinking about it. And it's really challenging because I could probably put together a all Big Ten ballot that had Nyes, Cooley, Snuggerud, Faber, Lacombe, closer. like
Yeah.
that's a legit all Big Ten first team. Like I know Fantilli probably deserves to be in there. Luke
Yeah.
Hughes probably deserves to be in there, but they didn't win the league. You know what I mean? Like in high school, when you're doing their all conference type awards, it's usually like the team that finished first gets, 10 players, and the team that finished second gets 7, and the team that finishes third gets 5. And then if your team finished last, you get 1 or 2 players. And so I think it's going to be an interesting ballot this year because even the Hobie, you could probably say your Hobie hat trick could be Faber, Lacombe, and Nyes and Cooley. It's not a hat trick anymore. It's a 4 of a kind. So what do you guys think?
Well, I think you're right for one thing. It's hard not to say the Minnesota guys. But the thing is, putting Fantilli in there is not a terrible thing. Putting Hughes in there is not a terrible thing. Gosh, even that Ohio State defenseman, was it Lorai?
Lorai, yeah.
He's pretty damn good too. He was literally the reason why they played well or much better Saturday. He was in the box at the beginning of that 5-minute major.
Right.
And
And
then he comes out
when he was on the ice.
And then he's on the ice. Also, they get their 2 goals. So he was pretty effective. So he's not a terrible one either.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do, Jack?
Don't ask me. I have no zero idea. I have absolutely no clue.
Did you get your nominations in though, Viggs?
I haven't got the ballot yet. So I'm supposed to get it today. I haven't seen it yet. Maybe I got it while I
There was
was
supposed to
doing
be some kind of nominations on Monday that were due Monday or something like that.
that. Might be Hobie stuff.
Could be.
There's the fan voting and nomination is one step of the Hobie. There's actually a true nomination, which will happen now, where the coaches nominate 3 from their team and 3 from their conference, or 3 from their conference and 3 national, something like that. And that's the true nomination for the Hobie. This whole fan balloting thing is just a PR thing, just to give people something to talk about. The actual nomination stuff happens now. So Bob probably wishes he could nominate 6 from his team.
Okay, then you think your ballot's gonna be similar to Jess's though for Big Ten awards? I think Jess is another voter.
Yeah, Jess is probably another voter.
I think you two are the only 2 for Minnesota that are voting.
It could be. I think Fantilli has shown that he probably deserves to get.
He's leading the league in points, and he's played less games.
He's played really well, and Hughes, he's been great. It's just it's hard to make those decisions. Even with the Gophers, like who's their best defenseman? Is it Lacombe? Is it Faber? I think Faber is the better all around player. And Lacombe's a little bit flashier. If I was drafting a team out of the Big Ten players, as much as Nyes and Cooley and Fantilli are guys that you'd probably want for the flash. I could probably draft Faber and have a defenseman that could play 30 minutes a night and give me a chance to win all the time. Or I could draft someone like Lacombe, who probably makes my special teams one of the best in the Big Ten. So it's challenging. I probably am leaning towards Faber as the top defenseman just because of that dominating aspect of the game and how good he is at that. Whereas I think Lacombe and Hughes are probably in that 1B category where they're really, really talented offensively and they're really skilled, but they're not complete players. So they look really good on the score sheet and the stats, but I think I'd rather have Faber as that top defensive player.
Like I said, you can't. I mean, I think you do have to put Fantilli in there, and like you said, you take out a Snuggerud.
Yeah,
I don't think that's
Nyes,
up front. I don't think it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, Nyes feels like the top forward because he's disciplined and he produces and he dominates a game. You know, he's figured out how to toe the line for the most part and be really, really effective. And I think he carries the water on his line with Snuggerud and Cooley. Like if they don't have Nyes on that line, I don't think they have as much space. I don't think they're as much as productive and consistent because he does a lot for them.
Who's NHL ready? I think is a good question. Good way to put it over the top, I kind of think.
Nyes and Faber. Like they both could step into a NHL playoff race right now.
Right.
Of course, it's got to be close for goalie, doesn't it? I mean, his numbers, for the most part, are the best in the league, aren't they?
I think so.
Who would have thought?
And of course, Bob for putting this team together. I know some people think the coach of the year is sometimes the coach that has done the most with the least. Not this time. This is a coach that's built this roster and has them playing consistent. And you just look at their record. It's unbelievable how many top-ranked teams they've played and how well they've done.
Yeah, the Big 10 points is just the gap is.
Yeah, that's a record, wasn't it?
Yeah,
19 points.
Ever been.
That is, and we kind of you called a split this past weekend, Viggs. I called like 4 or 5.
I was surprised. I was selling Ohio State last weekend, Jack. I don't know if you listened to our podcast last weekend, but I thought Ohio State had a lot to play for, and I thought they would probably come away with the majority of the points last weekend. And the Gophers surprised me with how well they played. I wasn't 100% that Faber was going to play. Bob kind of chastised me in the post game on Saturday, saying he wasn't worried. But like in my mind, I remember Brock early in his career, like he got a hit to the head where he looked woozy on the bench, and he talked the trainers into letting him get back in the game. And I just kind of feel like he's kind of that guy who's just like, yeah, I'm fine. No, this doesn't hurt. Yes, I have full range of motion, even though maybe it hurts. He's just like, let me back out there. I have to be out there. So I kind of worried that maybe he was lying to the trainers. And I think Bob understood that as he started to answer the question. He's like, well, we had to make sure he wasn't lying to the trainers. It's like, well, yes. It's like, you got to protect the players from themselves.
It's such a short schedule. You want to play every single minute you possibly can. So,
but Bob's been really good with those defensive minutes this year, Viggs. He's gotten some of those guys' times down, and it's led to this deeper team. They played 7 defense the entire season until they had the injuries and they went to Penn State. Otherwise, they had 70 every game.
Yeah, I always think that's the tough part with Minnesota is you play such a difficult non-conference schedule. I think it's hard to develop your team because those games are so important. I think the fact that he had these 3D coming back gave him the luxury of getting everybody else acclimated, which has got to be super rare. Like, Jack, you've gone through this. Like, that first part of the season is a gauntlet for Minnesota all the time. How do you get young players up to speed through that?
By putting them through a gauntlet. It's kind of the way. It's kind of the way. No, like think about it almost in reverse right there. If you start off with an easy schedule and all of a sudden, boom, you're hit with these guys, and then it's a completely different game. And kind of the latter part of the year, that's too late for them to catch up. But if you throw those kids into the fire right away,
I just know that sometimes when you do that, you open yourself up for that 0.0001 scenario. That's
Right.
my point. Is like when you play that tough of a schedule, if you don't have success,
yeah,
you have put yourself in a hole in the second
Yep.
half. So how much do you balance throwing players into the breach and saying, good luck? You know, Don used to always joke, you know, sometimes with those freshmen, you got to push them over the boards a little bit to get them back
Yep.
out there for their next shift against North Dakota and Duluth, you know, all that stuff. It's hard. You have to do it, I think, but it can burn you.
I agree. I mean, it's like the higher guy, the higher prospects coming in have longer leashes, right? And you want to put them out there, and even if they get burned, you kind of have to keep them out there because they're your high prospects and let it go. And guys that are playing well, pull them back. My freshman year, we played Duluth, I think like the second week of the season, and I was practicing really hard, practicing really well. It was more effort than skill. Be upfront with that, right? But Don put me with Camarada and Cluse, which looking back on it, that's not a very good line combination in the grand scheme of things. But I played a period and a quarter, and he took me off and put me back on the fourth line. So it was like he was like, I threw him into the fire. Guy was not ready.
I know you scored though. You scored it on the deck though, not the deck, the AMSO. I remember you scored right in front of me actually.
That was my first college goal though. No, that was against St. Cloud. Sorry.
Okay, maybe your second.
I think that was my sophomore year. Yeah, it took till my sophomore year to score a goal. So there's a reason why I didn't play with the first line. But yeah, it was some guys you can throw into the fire and they're ready for it. It kind of depends on those series too. Like a North Dakota series, like you can throw me into the fire because it's physical, it's gonna be gritty like that. I'm not gonna shy away from that. But if you want to throw me into the fire where I need to score goals and stuff like that, I'm not gonna do that. So there's different fires that you can throw guys into.
Well, it's crazy because like you play a team like Minnesota State or St. Cloud or Duluth right now, and throwing into the fire means don't turn the puck over at the blue lines.
Mm-hmm.
Which is very different than North Dakota, which means let's get up and down the rink, let's hit, let's be physical, let's get to the net.
Yep.
That's very different to me. And I think that's the hardest thing about these players when they transition from whatever league they've come from to the Gophers is when you're playing St. Cloud, Duluth, and Minnesota State right now is you can't turn the puck over at certain spots of the rink, and you can't chase offense at certain times of your shift. And I think that's the hard thing to remember. And it's so difficult to teach. And sometimes until they touch the stove, you can't get through to them.
No, 100%. I mean, that's why your first line is your first line, but your first line isn't your first line in the last 4 minutes of a game. Right? It's sometimes that never clicks. And there's that. So those teams, but we have the depth this year that, you know, I think you can put anybody out there in the last few minutes of a game where when I was at the U, it was my line kind of going out there for the last few minutes of the game because we didn't have that scoring but responsibility depth, you know, but where my line had the responsibility but not the scoring depth. So this year kind of has they're playing with 18 seniors is a kind of a way to put it.
Well, I think the maturity of Cooley and Suggerud has shocked me. Like I was talking to somebody about this week where I was like, those guys are confident, mature, make the right decisions. Whereas I thought like Lucius and Casey Middlestat like had lots of skill, all the talent in the world, really, really good players. But the maturity, compete, the hunger to hunt pucks and forecheck was not there. And I think it's taken Casey like 4 or 5 years of pro hockey to actually get that. And it was not there at 19 or 18 or whatever when he was a freshman. Lucius, same thing. You know, maybe that's going to come with him, but it's not there yet. The offensive stuff is there in the zone, on the power play, on the rush, in transition, but like that other 60% of the game, that's the unknown, I think, with those kind of players. And that's why Cooley's the top prospect for Wheeler in his ranking. Is like that guy competes hard. And when he sees the game get physical, like he answers the bell and he's like, I've got some FU in my game and I'm going to show you. It's fun to watch.
Snuggerud's taken a few big hits the last couple weeks. He was knocked into the bench at Wisconsin, and I think last week there was some kind of helicopter hit somewhere in there where he went flying. I was kind of surprised.
Yeah, he could use a little more weight on that frame, I think, right now, and also a little more, awareness that he's going to draw the runs from other guys during the season. And I saw some on Twitter that the Blues said, he's going to stick around for a while with Minnesota. They're not going to rush him to pro hockey, which I think is good for both parties.
Yeah, that's right. We like that.
Yeah, good for Minnesota. Nyes, on the other hand, I think he's going right in the playoff race for the Leafs.
He's going to be a difference maker. That's going to be exciting. Really exciting to watch.
They need it in Toronto.
Well, he's going to the right team. He'll be able to fit in as a young player with veterans and figure it out. Like, could you imagine him and O'Reilly out there together hunting pucks in the offensive zone in the playoffs? It'd be like playing with a better Ben Myers. Look out.
How is Benny doing this year?
I'm not positive on Cooley, though.
I think it'd benefit him to come back just because next year, without Nyes, he's going to have to figure out how to be more of the guy. Because I think when you play with a guy like Ben Myers, it was easier for Nyes last year. This year for Nyes, without Ben Myers, probably harder, but he's learned to adjust through it. Cooley's going to go through the same thing. I don't know who he'll play with next year if he comes back, but obviously, him and Snuggerud have a lot of chemistry. Figure out another big body to pair with him.
More?
He's got some time.
The other one.
Junior.
Easy.
Junior.
Oliver Moore, you mean?
Yes.
Yeah, I think Oliver Moore probably fits with a different set of players. He's okay. more of a Cooley type player, all speed. But maybe you could see someone like Hughlin play with Snuggerud and Cooley. That would require some position changing. Maybe move Hughlin to wing. He looked really good there last year. Maybe something like that could work.
Who's the top prospect coming in next year?
Oliver Moore.
Yeah.
He's with the development team, and he's super fast. He'll be like a top 15 pick, maybe top 10. He's got some electric skating, one-on-one skills. Fun player
center
to
or
watch.
wing?
Center.
Okay.
So I know Bob likes to usually put his freshman at wing to start. He didn't with Cooley. Yeah, he didn't with Cooley. He just kind of said, okay, you're a center. You're third overall pick and probably the top player outside the NHL right now. So
looks like they've got 4 guys signed the letter of intent so far. That hasn't changed, has it, Vigs?
I don't think so. And then it sounds like Closer, Brodzinski, and Stodiker are going to use their 5th year and come back if they want to, which will be interesting.
So what does that do for the goalies? Because isn't the other Canadian goalie coming in?
Airy hasn't signed his NLI yet.
Okay.
And he can play another year in the BCHL. So he's got one more year he can play there. So it all makes sense.
Who's he with in the BCHL?
Cranbrook? The Bucks? It's not one of the BCHL teams I know.
No, it's a newly added team in the last 5 years or so.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know much about the Bucks.
I follow Penticton and I follow the Gophers. It's like every game I can read on Twitter, I'm reading everything.
Yeah, it's like if you don't play for the Smoke Eaters or Penticton or Vernon, I don't know who you are in the BCHL.
So nobody in the interior division.
So right now, obviously, they've got the 4 guys. maybe he's anticipating to keeping those other guys, bring in the 4 guys, and then, like you said, bringing back closer, and whoever else. What was it?
Brodzinski
And Stodaker.
Is the portal still open, or how did the COVID portal? How does that work?
It's still there. Yeah.
Yep, still definitely there.
So does that end when those COVID freshmen are gone, or is that just how it works now?
It'll always be there. I just think you're gonna have players running out of their COVID years.
Yeah, the COVID years will eventually expire. Like,
well, that's what I mean. The no penalty portal.
Well, I don't think the no penalty is still there.
Yeah, the no penalty transfer is still there for people, but that extra 5th year won't be there anymore.
So was it only 5th year seniors transferring without a penalty, or were
everyone could transfer free of sitting out now? The NCAA changed that.
I mean, look, Kirkshank went from CC to Minnesota to St. Cloud.
I was just looking him up actually because he's having a Hobie Baker year, right?
He was doing really well for a while.
That's crazy, and I wonder what the difference was. Change of scenery, playing time, or what? But
position.
I mean, some of that. I think Krushank got more than enough opportunities at the U. He just played timid.
That's a good word. That sounds right.
He deferred way too much, like passing instead of shooting, perimeter instead of driving. He wasn't demanding the puck. Like, you see Cooley and Suggerud, they demand the puck. They shoot first. They take advantage of opportunities they get. I never saw that with Cruikshank at the U. But yeah, they'll have Renzel and Rudd and Stodaker coming back. So that's their D. So they lose 3. They add Stodaker, and then Renzel and Rudd come in. And then they'll probably lose Nelson.
Cooley, Nyes, Nelson.
Cooley, Nyes. And they bring in more Hendrickson and maybe one more. So that's kind of what it's looking like, I think.
Yeah. Because really the letter of intent is kind of your official thing now.
It means there is a spot for you on the roster next fall.
Yes.
If you want it.
But technically everything else it's just a verbal commitment until that point. Technically.
Correct. Yep.
I had a friend asking me about that today. I go, really, it's tricky because you look at someone like Cooley, he was committed to Notre Dame, wasn't he?
Mm-hmm.
But he never signed his letter.
He never signed anything.
Yeah.
Once you sign something, you have to get a release.
Gotcha. That's such a weird commitment looking back on it, like the type of player he is going to Notre Dame. Can you see that working out? Like,
no. It might have been just a Pennsylvania thing at Notre Dame. And obviously it's a name. It is still a name.
Should we get not the rumor, but the snowball going and headlines of, is Minnesota done with Minnesota recruiting? We got Cooley and we're getting into out of states and Nyes. Should we?
And you got Eiserman coming out from Boston, isn't he?
Yep.
How did they get him, Viggs?
Bob and the current players. I think when Eiserman sees how well Cooley is doing, he's like, yeah, that's going to be me. I'm going to do that. He's giving Cooley the chance to play center with Nyes and Suggerud and get all the minutes as a freshman. Yeah, that's going to be me when I come in 2 years.
And maybe Snuggerud is probably the reason why Cooley's here. They played together, and it's like, hey, come on board.
For sure.
Yeah, it would surprise people the amount of like alumni and commits that are doing recruiting for you. Like, pays dividends for sure.
How do the alumni feel about all these non-Minnesota kids taking scholarships from the University of Minnesota?
I've heard the alumni room is getting a lot of love this year. Like, people are going to games, so
they are.
As long as I guess I'm not a Minnesota native, but I am a Minnesota native. But like, To me, it doesn't matter.
The only reason because your dad wasn't here.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just how it is.
right.
You look at Johnson, the defenseman. You know, his dad. He grew up in L.A. because that's where his dad was playing, or he's born there, or whatever. So that's
as long as the product is there, like, who gives a crap? Bob is doing a hell of a job. He's a great recruiter, so hopefully it pays dividends this year.
and
So
really
he doesn't. Well, as long as
ahead.
he doesn't bring in a Chris Chucko, this track record is still okay as long as he doesn't do that.
Who's it? Give me that backstory. I don't know that one.
He was a big, tough Canadian kid who got recruited to play at Minnesota, and he just flamed out, never really produced. I think he was like a pretty decent draft pick when he came in, but just like did not.
Yeah, but there's
fit
been
in.
a lot of those.
Well, yeah, but like he didn't fit in either,
No.
and so he didn't make it. Peter Kennedy, who was a Canadian player, I think those were the last two. He came in as a Canadian, which was kind of surprising, and he never really made it on the roster either.
Hey, Matt,
I remember seeing Chuck
Justin
after he was
Close.
done. I saw Chuck go down there with his girlfriend, and he was wearing like a fur coat or something down in the bowels of Mary Beach. I'm like, what are you doing?
LaFontaine sort of worked out for a while.
He did. Oh boy. Stick
Curious
fork and Vigo.
Was that last year that LaFontaine left?
Yeah.
Just over a year
mid-season.
Ago. That seems like light years ago.
It does, doesn't it?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Poor Laffer.
You can't blame those guys to pass up those opportunities, but it hasn't panned out so far, right? But what are you gonna do?
Worked out pretty well for Mr. Close.
Thanks, Laffer. We love you.
And he's Canadian.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. You never know.
And Shearhorn is almost a Canadian, being from Alaska.
Right? He's a native of Minnesota by now, though.
Hey, he lives here.
Right?
We welcome them all in.
That's the culture thing.
Hey, it literally started with Patoli. And then Vanek. You had outsiders come in, win national championships. After that happened, people don't care if it's an all-Minnesota team anymore.
I do think the key, though, is that they've got to be like Nyes, Cooley, Vanek.
Yeah.
They've got to come in and be star-type players. You can't bring in a Chucko, a Kennedy to be role players. There's plenty of Minnesota guys who can do that role.
You're not getting a Ramsey from Arizona. No.
It just wouldn't fit, would it?
That's just a waste of a roster spot.
Unless your dad took you out there and kept you there and didn't let you come back to be a skipper. That's a different story. Then you're the Ryan Johnson type guy, and that's fine. We understand you're held against your will outside 10,000 lakes, and you just want to be back. You want to be a part of it.
Where were you born?
Farmington Hills, Michigan.
There you go.
Yep. I don't know if I was a Michigan guy. I don't think so. I never spoke to him in the recruiting process.
I think Ramsey would have been a Michigan Tech guy if he had to stay.
Yeah,
it's Michigan.
More so that there's like a small list of teams that I'm a fit for.
Oh boy, I tell you.
Andrew Carlson's comment is spot on. It's perfect.
I mean, how great is Carl Fish right now? Like, that is, not only does his family show up to every game, whether or not he's playing or not, but he's got to be living the dream. He's going into Strauss skates every once in a while to probably get his skate sharpened and talk to Moose and just be like, this is the dream right now. Kid from the East Side playing the maroon and gold, which is great for everybody. It's a fun story, and that's what I think land grant institutions are supposed to be about, is that kind of relationship with their community.
And he just fits so well in with them, Vigs. I see him joining the rush. It's not like he's playing Mr. Conservative back there. I've seen him down at the net looking for a rebound sometimes.
Mm-hmm. But he knows to get back, too.
Yes.
He knows to take that chance and get involved and throw his size around and then get back to doing what he does. I thought he's had a great year.
Really, I think this team is just about not beating themselves for Viggs. And as dumb as it may sound, not running into Minnesota State or maybe getting past that Minnesota State nightmare because that's still in their heads.
I almost want to, just like Jack. It's like I want to see all the smoke right now. Like I want to see all the teams that they've had trouble with over the years with this roster because I don't see any fear coming out of this locker room and I don't see any nervousness. Like we've talked about, like the end of the game when they pull the goalie, you feel very confident they're going to find a way to get scoring chances because it's not just one chance when they do that. It's 4 and 5 every time because they win so many second chances. I don't know how they're so good at it other than the anticipation, the hockey IQ, the compete, but like they win so many second chances. And it's just
the chill, Viggs.
How do you coach that? Because that's the difference to me with this roster is how they're able to do that.
Yeah, we haven't seen that really in a long, well, maybe ever, or at least in a long time that I can remember. I mean, even those teams back in the early 2000s weren't big comeback teams and things like that.
Yeah, I'm trying to think like when Klose was playing, it seemed like he had some groups where they would just get second, third, fourth chances very consistently, like on the power play, but it wasn't the whole roster.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? This team feels like it has a lot of guys like that. When you watch the Nelson, Brodzinski, Hughlin line out there, like they win so many pucks, or Nevers, Nelson, Brodzinski, the Hughlin, Pitlick, Lamb line, like they win a lot of second chances.
Depth.
And somebody, I was just going to bring this one up. There's so little drama with this team. Someone brought this up to me. Well, there was the drama with Cooley and girls, but that's college stuff. All the
we
time.
think she was in the chat here, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was in the chat trying to raise some drama
during our podcast. Look at Jack's face.
Can you give me the details without?
Okay, you go for
bringing
it.
Up the drama.
How many players did you have teammates where they broke up with a girl mid-season, and she went, and tried to tell everybody that he was a bad guy?
Just one.
Okay, yeah, just one. So anyway, that's apparently what happened. Is Cooley wasn't faithful to a girlfriend, and he's an 18-year-old freshman who's a Logan Cooley.
18 years old. I mean,
whatever. That you're not getting married at 18, especially when no one's proposed or anything. So that was the only drama. But the on-ice drama, I was talking to somebody, and coming back from World Juniors, there can sometimes be friction with when the players leave for World Juniors, guys on the team get elevated into certain roles and maybe perform well and take advantage of that opportunity. But when the World Junior guys come back, they reassume their roles that they had before. And there's maybe a little bit of drama with the player who's now put back on the fourth line or is now being scratched or now doesn't feel like they're a part of the team. Or you have guys who go to the World Juniors like Chesley and you don't play. And so you're away from your team. You're not playing. You feel like you deserve to be in the lineup. And then you come back into your role back with the team. And whether you medal or not, there could be drama. But this year, no drama after the World Juniors at all. Everything seems to be going just smooth. Does that vibe at all, Jack? I see some head shakes there.
I'm just thinking it all over. Like it's just a character thing. Like if you're pulled into the lineup because these potential NHL players are leaving and they're coming back, like not to be a dick, but know your role. Like I knew my role. I knew what I was recruited for. I got exactly what I was promised. I did it for 4 years. Like, know your role. So that's you get your chance to earn the role. And yeah, I don't know. There should never be any drama around that.
But you should know your role. Like just example, last year, Tristan Brose did not understand his role and did not connect with the team and always felt like he was getting the short end of the stick. And that's why he left for Denver. Lucius, injuries, wouldn't play through some of them, doesn't know his role.
That's character.
Drama.
Just character stuff.
Drama and character. And
well, someone was telling me like that the Nelson line, they are extremely hard on each other, but it's all in fun. They literally they come back to the bench. She's like, "How did you miss that?" And it's like that type of attitude, but they're the best of friends, and it's like it's kind of like me saying to you, what are you doing there? And you're just like, yeah, sorry, we'll do better. I mean, it's that kind of very loosey-goosey type of thing.
But it's also the holding yourselves accountable too.
True.
Like I dumped the puck in your corner. Where were you? That's what you're supposed to do. I come down. We're supposed to hard wrap. You're supposed to go to the other side and pick it up. And you went to the net. What are you doing? That's not what we're supposed to do. You got to have some of that too. Like you can have the joking stuff too, but you also have to have the stuff where it's like, hey, do your job. Where was F3 there? I was already at the net. Why'd you join me at the net? You should have been in the high slot. Stuff like that.
I heard Fish going crazy. He couldn't get back onto the bench because of the way Faber was trying to get over at the same time, and Faber couldn't move out of the way. It's like, effing move. And then they just start laughing because he's like, I can't. So when I saw that kind of attitude on the bench, I'm like, come on, let's do this. And then they're all laughing after that.
It's a comfortable team.
Yep. That's it right there.
The only thing that worries me is like this team they were hot out of the gate, and they do have guys that have been there and haven't had the tournament success that they've wanted to. They have, but they haven't. But just any adversity in the playoffs, like I hope they run into adversity in the first playoff game. Like I hope they get down kind of like the Ohio game, or I hope we get Michigan again, in the championship when we go down 2-0 earlier or something like that. And it's a late game. Like I want them to get some of that battle test before the NCAAs, because I just don't feel like they've had a ton of it this year.
You don't want to see them down 2-0 to RIT in the third period.
Oh, yeah, right. Who did they lose to? Was it 2012, 2013?
Was it Harvard?
No, was it? It wasn't Providence,
Yale.
was it?
Well, Yale was the one where they hadn't played on an
NHL
NHL-sized rink for a long time. Like they hadn't played on an NHL-sized rink the entire second half of the year, basically, and they went to overtime and lost on the first shift, basically, against Yale.
Yeah,
that was a horrible, because the ice was still kind of wet too. It was just
it did do something weird.
Yeah.
Holy Cross was 2006. Ugh.
Yeah.
And
I remember,
but Yale did go on to win the tournament that year, I think.
They did.
So Yale was probably better than everybody thought, but it was still like one of those games where it's like, all right, overtime, and like right away, critical mistake, game over.
And that's just it. You don't want to get to overtime in the NCAA tournament.
No, we shouldn't get there.
Because it was literally that Holy Cross game was they came down 3-on-2. It hit a defenseman's shin. And who, I don't remember the goalie was. It wasn't, I don't believe it was Frazee. Was it Briggs maybe?
I can't remember.
He played the shot, and it went off a goal and went off a defenseman's leg, and then it opened it up the goal when it came right back to the player, and he put it right in the back of the net. And then all the Sioux fans went crazy.
Are any of St. Cloud's endeavors worse than the Holy Cross, or that's just the Holy Cross is the holy grail of?
Well, they lost the AIC
as the number
Sioux
one
Falls,
seed,
as the number one overall seed.
But is it worse?
But that was because Bob was taking the Gopher job.
Oh gosh!
According to Huskies. Woo!
Huskies, woo, yeah.
Players were distracted. They were losing their coach. I guarantee you the players were not thinking about losing their coach. They were thinking, oh my God, we're losing to AIC in the first round and we're the number 1 overall seed. They weren't worried about Bottom.
Minnesota was the number 2 overall seed against Holy Cross. And Holy Cross, Bemidji was the lowest seed in that tournament. They played Wisconsin in Milwaukee, I believe.
I feel like you're wrong on that. I'm pretty sure that was the first.
It was a
16-1 game.
I believe Wisconsin was the overall number 1 that year.
Okay.
Look it up. I'm going off of memory. We'll see if the chat. There we go. Steve says Wisconsin was number 1.
Yep.
All right. Fine.
I believe they played Bemidji in not Milwaukee. What's that other?
Green Bay.
Green Bay. There you go. See?
Mm-hmm.
So Minnesota was not the overall number 1 seed.
Okay.
I know. Bemidji. Were they in the CHA? Were they at the CHA back then? They weren't in the WCHA yet, I don't think.
Not gonna know this one. They probably got an auto bid. So
yeah. Oh.
So Jack, what's your day look like tomorrow? You got the whole day just to get your mind right for a big section final? Did you play in many section finals in your day?
1. I was 2 years of high school hockey, my sophomore, junior year, and we got our shit kicked by Benilde my sophomore year.
At Mariucci with the great defenseman on the other side.
Yep, and then we lost to Wayzata in the semifinals, and when we were the number 1 or 2 seed in the state, because we went 8-0 in the Lake Conference, which I don't know if that's ever happened before or after. Like, that's crazy hard to do, and then we had to go through the state tournament gauntlet, and we lost to Wayzata. So, yep, that was it.
Well, I know one team that went undefeated in the Lake Conference, but it was a different Lake Conference back then. It was like blue and red, and it was weird.
Classic and
yeah, it might have been even classic by then, and it was just weird.
It was a gauntlet in the mid 2000s and my years. Not fair, but that's the way high school hockey works.
So do you have to set out your agenda for tomorrow about what to say, what not to say? Have you thought about it?
No, I'm because I'm not on the bench. I'm in the stands. I'll be in the locker room before periods. I'll be there, a couple hours early, like normal, and just chit chat it up and be there for the pregame speeches and talks and stuff. But I'll be sitting with the goalie coach and the JV coaches and whatnot in the stands, and I'll be there in between periods and do my same thing. Talk to my 2 or 3 guys in between periods, check out Chan's systems, and throw any advice on things I see. But I try to stay out of their hair, a little bit, but not too much. So I'll probably have no nails by the end of tomorrow night. That's pretty much it. So
you can just watch the game with Ben Gordon and let him do all the talking, and
yeah. It'll be good. I'm sure I'll see a million faces of people, from the past. It's like every single high school game you go to, whether if it's a Lake Conference game, you see somebody from somebody's parent you played with 15 years ago or something like that. So it's always fun.
All right, guys. It's 11:30. I'm tired.
Yep.
Jack's got a big day ahead. I'm excited for you. Section finals are the best.
They are.
It'll be a good one.
They are.
It's gonna be a nail biter.
Good luck tomorrow, man.
I'm nervous. I didn't want to think about it before bed, but now I am. So now I'm not.
No, you're not. Think about the Gophers instead. There you go. Thinking about planning your trip down to Mariucci for the BigTen championship.
There you go.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for staying up late as you always do. We'll catch you next time.